What's up, guys? This is Justin Coffin for the 330 Sports Show. It's almost the end of July. It is Tuesday, July 30th when we're recording this. Appreciate you guys joining us and tuning in. We are going to have Steve Helwagen of Bucknuts 24/7 Sports joining us here in just a second. He was at Big Ten Media Days and prepping for Ohio State camp upcoming this Thursday. So we're going to bring him in just a second here. Below on the ticker, I have just some information on Ohio State schedule, the preseason rankings by a few conglomerates. So that is down there on the bottom. But let's not waste any time. Let's just bring our guest right in. Steve, appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Oh,
and your dog too.
Yeah, the dogs kind of freaked out here a second ago, just as we were going live. So yeah, it is a great day. Obviously, preseason camp getting ready to start Thursday, and just resting up and getting ready for it.
Yeah, this is full go for you too, I'm sure. So last week you were in Indy for Big Ten Media Days. Let's just get right into it. So you obviously, talked to Ryan Day. You heard him talk at his presser. What is his mentality and maybe the team's mentality entering this 2024 season?
Well, I think that Coach Day and the team, they're approaching this, in the sense that they need to make it happen. Obviously, you have so many guys who came back from last season, had the opportunity to jump to the NFL, and they decided to stay at Ohio State and try and push to win the national championship, the Big Ten championship, beat Michigan this year. And I think that, you look at it, it's just more a case of urgency, I guess, with this team, this program, these players, these seniors, that they haven't accomplished what they wanted to accomplish the last 3 years, obviously. And I think that you see that sense of urgency anywhere you look within this program. So, I think that it's going to be, to me, it's going to be a fun year. I just think that you have to kind of understand that, again, it's a different landscape, obviously, with an 18-team Big Ten. You're still playing 9 conference games, but one of them now is being played on the West Coast in Eugene, Oregon, against the University of Oregon, one of the top programs in the country. And there's also a 12-team playoff at the end. So if you were to lose a game or two, you could still find your way into the playoff through the 12-team format, which goes live for the first time this year. So there is a little bit of a safety net involved there. Don't try this at home. You don't want to get in as one of the lower 8 seeds. You want to qualify your way in as a conference champion and get that first round bye. That's going to make things so much easier to be one of the top 4 seeds. And so I just look at it that, this has the potential of being one of the most memorable seasons for Ohio State. And I think everybody just needs to take a deep breath and just relax, and they'll get into it soon enough. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I think what you said, especially about that 12-team playoff format this year, the pressure, as you well know, this fan base puts on the team, its players, its coaches. I can't imagine what it's like to be in that, building after you beat Indiana by only 14 points, or by, if you only get a 21-point win versus Northwestern, let alone escaping, with a close win. It's the pressure this fan base puts on this team might be a good sign, because it's one. We know how good this team is, but another thing, it can add a lot of extra pressure to a team. With that said, Steve, what are your concerns? You cover this team inside and out. You know the players, you know the coaches. What are your concerns entering 2024?
Well, I think you think about the quarterback position. It's not been, obviously, you're spoiled when you have people like Haskins and Justin Fields, and then C.J. Stroud. I mean, that 5-year period there, and even with Barrett before that, you had championship caliber quarterback play. And I don't think last year that was necessarily the case with Kyle McCord, although it was kind of impacted as well by the substandard play, some of the worst offensive line play that we've seen from Ohio State in the modern era of Ohio State football, 30 years or more. It was one of the worst offensive line showings, I thought, all season long. Particularly when you get into the big games, you got to be able to establish the run, protect the quarterback, and they didn't do that, obviously, in the big games. So I think that those are the areas that I think most people have kind of pinpointed on as they look toward this season, to understand that that it's going to be a big test, I think, for this team. The schedule kind of front loaded when you talk about the challenges or lack thereof at the beginning, and that it'll ramp up as they go. I think Iowa at home and then at Oregon, their games 5 and 6 are going to be pretty tough, obviously. You go at Penn State the first weekend in November, and then you host Michigan there at the end. I mean, those are going to be 4 pretty tough games right there. So, but prior to that, you open with Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, and at Michigan State. So those are games that Ohio State ought to be able to take care of business and get all the systems worked out for the tougher games that are to follow.
No doubt. So let me flip that on you a little bit. Now you mentioned Will Howard. I feel like the national perspective is Will Howard's the guy. Down there in Columbus, Ryan Day, I think, has all but sort of named the starter. Do you get the same vibes down there? Is Will Howard 100% the guy?
Well, Day hasn't really announced it or anointed it that way, but it does appear that that's the way the direction is going to go. And I think that you bring a guy in with 2 years of starting experience in Kansas State, where he won a conference championship. It just looks and feels like he would be the choice. And Devin Brown has kind of bided his time at Ohio State and sat behind McCord last year. And then he got injured when he had recurring injuries all season long, got injured against Penn State running the football, injured in the Missouri bowl game. And we never got a chance or a sense of what he's capable of doing. I mean, that might have changed things right there had he not been injured in the Kansas State game, or rather the Missouri game, and had a chance to show what he was capable of doing. And instead, you're left with those question marks. They were able to find a guy with 2 years experience with a Big 12 championship to his credit. And I think that you bring him in here, it's his team. Maybe he didn't necessarily show it 100% in the spring, but I think it's going to be his team to lead when this season begins. And you just let the chips fall where they may. I mean, you've got the freshman Julian Sayin, who transferred in from Alabama in mid-January. I mean, after school had started in January, he arrived. So, yeah, it is kind of a crazy circumstance when you look at this quarterback position, but get through this season, and they've recruited really well at that position. They've got Tavian St. Clair coming in next year, and they'll have Julian Sayin battling and Aaron Nolan battling for that spot as well. So to me, it looks like it's Howard's job, but again, he's got to go out and show it during preseason camp.
Yep. And I know you're a basketball guy too, Steve. So, I mean, the old saying, like, just be a point guard, distribute the ball to your skill players and let them go to work. That's kind of what it feels like with this team, with Judkins and Henderson and all that plethora of wide receiver talent. Would you agree with that statement, or does Will Howard have to, or Devin Brown, or whoever it might be, do they have to be the CJ Stroud level play? Like, is it going to take that, or can they be distributors?
Well, I think it obviously helps. As the best play that you get out of your quarterback, it makes life so much easier on the guys around them. I think the offensive line's got to play, have so much better year than last year, and I think that they will. I think Seth McLaughlin is an addition, possibly at the center position. Sounds like Carson Hinsman could move from center to right guard. The other 3 spots pretty much the same, with Josh Fryer at right tackle, Josh Simmons at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard. You make a good point. you've got Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, two running backs who each have 1,000-yard seasons in their college careers to their credit. Henderson's been a bit banged up the last year or two, split some time with some other backs, but it looks like that's going to be a great 1-2 tandem, however you stack them up. And then at the wide receiver position, Emeka Egbuka comes back after being hamstrung with an ankle injury, good part of last season. Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, a couple of guys returning for their second year who just kind of scratched the surface of what they were able to do last year. And you have the true freshman, Jeremiah Smith, the nation's #1 overall prospect coming in from Florida. He was nothing short of sensational in the spring, so you're going to put him in the mix as well. And he may break some freshman receiving records, I think, at Ohio State this upcoming season if everything kind of rolls his way. So you've got 5 or 6 guys right there that you just take the snap and lay the ball off in those guys' hands and let them create and let them produce and let them flourish. And I think that's what this team's going to be all about in 2024.
That's awesome. And, we know there's a lot of skill players on the offense. Haven't even, and we didn't even get to Chip Kelly and what he's going to bring to the table. So what does Chip Kelly bring to this team?
Well, you're talking about a guy who's a veteran coach. First of all, he was Ryan Day's college coach at New Hampshire, and Ryan Day trusts him. They've worked together in the NFL previously where Chip Kelly was a head coach, and he walked away from a $5 million a year job as the UCLA head coach to take a $2 million job as the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he and Ryan Day, neither one of them have a college national championship ring or a Super Bowl ring that they've won it all, and they want to do that together this year at Ohio State. How long is Chip Kelly going to stay at Ohio State? It could be a one-year assignment. He could stay till the end of Ryan Day's tenure. You just don't know, or something in between. You just don't know what the whims are going to be of Chip Kelly and Ohio State and Ryan Day going forward. But you've got the people in place this year to make it happen. And I think that's what Ryan Day is excited about. He's turned over the play calling duties to Chip Kelly. He hasn't done that for anybody else yet in his head coaching career. And I think it's an exciting time. I think that Ryan Day will still be heavily involved in putting together the offense. And by that, I mean looking on a weekly basis and figuring out the plays that are going to work the best against that week's opponent. And you come up with a list of X number of plays that you're going to use in this game and against that defense. And I think he's going to be part of that scripting process. But then on game day, it's going to be in Chip Kelly's hands to make those decisions. And then, of course, Ryan Day will be there to make the game decisions. Do we go for it on 4th down? What do we do special teams wise? All these other things. Keep an eye on the defense, which made just a quantum leap last year. They went from giving up 21 points a game the year before to just 11, basically sliced that in half last year. And Michigan really was the only team that was able to exploit some things against the Ohio State defense. So we're going to find out a lot about that unit and whether they're going to be made for the long haul this year as well. So there's a lot of great things that I think are going to come out of this with Chip Kelly being at Ohio State, and that Ryan Day is going to be involved in more aspects of the program, recruiting, NIL, all these other things that are involved in assembling a football program. Now Ryan Day can concentrate on more of those things.
Yeah, and I've even heard NFL coaches say it is way more difficult now to be a college head coach than it is an NFL head coach. These guys have 0 time off. So,
you got to raise money and then you have to distribute money. And that's never been, raising money to a degree was always part of the equation, going out and shaking hands with people. And if you want to get a building built, you got to go out and press the flesh and ask people for money. That's always been a part of the job for a college head coach. But to then turn around and make tough decisions on, we're going to pay this player this much money and this player this much money, and we need what to keep him here, those kind of things, those, break the bank type questions. It's crazy to think about. But at a school like Ohio State, you've got the resources to be able to go out and do those kind of things and to put a winning team on the field. And we'll see all these efforts are going to come together. And on August 31st, they'll take the field against Akron at Ohio Stadium, and we'll start to see what it was all about.
Sounds good. Well, Steve, I let off with like kind of maybe a negative question with what are your concerns? Let me flip that. What's the number one thing or number one player or aspect of the game that you're most excited about headed into this season?
Well, I think you have to be excited about the situation on defense. They've got 8 or 9 of the starters returning. You've got some potential all Big Ten, all American type guys, some guys that can go in the first round of the NFL draft, like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau out defensive end, Tyleik Williams at defensive tackle, Denzel Burke at cornerback. They are all potential first round NFL draft picks if they play well this upcoming season. So to me, do those guys live up to their billing? Do they play at a high Big Ten Power Five level? And that's what might set this team apart. Is your stars have to play their best games in the biggest games against those teams that we brought up earlier: Iowa, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. They don't have a marquee non-conference opponent this year, which is kind of weird. Ordinarily, they're playing a team like Notre Dame or Texas or somebody like that. But right now, this year, the way it worked out, it is an easier non-conference schedule. And that really worked to Michigan's benefit the last few years to get through that easy non-conference schedule without a Power 5 opponent and get to the playoff and ultimately win the national championship. So maybe Ohio State will take a page out of Michigan's book and do that this year without a Power 5 opponent. But there are 3 top 10 opponents on this schedule, and that makes it that much more difficult: Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. So we'll see how they negotiate all those games, certainly. But I think back on defense, to me, that's an area where Ohio State can be special. They were second in the country in points allowed, I think third in the country in total defense yards allowed last season. And, still, when the chips were on the line, Michigan was able to rush for almost 160 yards and dictate tempo in the second half, and made just enough plays to pull out that game. 30-24, I think, was the final score. Intercepted McCord in the final minute to turn the Buckeyes away. And this close, 30 yards away from, winning the Big Ten and possibly going on and winning a national championship. So it is, it's a tough balance, when you think about it, with the way these games are played and the way things go. But I think Ohio State's well positioned, certainly, to be right there in the hunt this year.
No doubt. It's that game of inches, and hopefully Ryan Day taking more of that CEO role that will help get them those extra couple inches. Steve, 2 more questions real quick before we go. So you had mentioned the new 18-team Big Ten conference. Based on some other outlets and putting together their top 10, Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Penn State 3, Michigan 4, Iowa 5. Ohio State's going to play 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the Big Ten. So there's a really good chance if they make it to the Big Ten title game, they're going to have a rematch. What's your thoughts on a rematch in the Big Ten title game, whoever it might be?
Yeah, it is a little bit unusual, and we have seen it. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 have been rematched before. Excuse me. Their format at that point was a little bit different because it was a 10-team league. They played 9 league games, and so it was automatically going to be a rematch. In this case, you don't know that because you have 18 teams. If it's Michigan on a 7-day repeat, that would be just a crazy 2-week period to be alive, I guess, to live through something like that. It's so good we're going to do it twice in a 8-day period. That would be crazy. But I look at it. Ohio State has played Wisconsin in a rematch in the championship game before. And if it does come to fruition, then I suppose we'll see how that turns out. Sometimes the team that loses the first game goes on and wins the second game, which ultimately is more important because it's the one that's, as we mentioned earlier, is going to set up the seeding for the college football playoff. And it's also the Big Ten championship. You host the trophy for winning the second one. The first one is just bragging rights, in the interim, I guess. So the second one's going to be the one that's probably more important. And for whichever matchup it might be, if it's Ohio State, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, or Ohio State, Michigan, it's very interesting. USC is a team this year that does not have to play Oregon or Ohio State. If USC goes 9-0 or 8-1, they could squeeze out the loser of the Ohio State-Oregon game very easily out of that scenario. So certainly if they're 9-0, they'd squeeze them out. So that's something to think about. I don't know that USC has a team that's going to go 9-0 this year, having lost their Heisman winner, Caleb Williams, but that is something to kind of have in the back of your mind that, you're not necessarily guaranteed the spot in the Big Ten championship game just by being Ohio State and throwing your helmet out there. You have to go out there and earn it. And we'll see if this team is up to that task, beginning with practice starting on Thursday and obviously into the early part of the season. But it is a new frontier, certainly. We'll find out, is money the solution to everything that's out there, because that's kind of what this whole marriage, this shotgun marriage with these 4 West Coast teams and these, 14 schools from the Eastern and Central time zones are kind of brought together. I would have thought would have made more sense was the 4 West Coast teams and 5 of the 6 Central time zone teams could have formed a Western division and played, round robin there. And then you'd play one crossover game. But if you go to that format, when you really think about it, it would limit the number of times that USC would be able to play Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State in the regular season. And obviously, those are the games that the TV networks really want. Those matchups with the league's 7 or 8 halves squaring off against each other. That's what they're paying the $1 billion a year in television rights for the Big Ten regular season contract. So, we're excited. Let's, it's starting August here, and we want to get to the end of August and get this season underway.
All right. Well, Steve, I know I've taken a lot of your time. I got to get you out of here on one more question.
Yeah.
Tony Petitti, you asked him a question last week at Big Ten Media Day, and of course, one of the national reporters had to go ahead and tweet it out and put a dig in there. But you asked him a very gutsy and ballsy question about basically just straightforward. What's the NCAA investigation on Michigan looking like? And it appears something is coming soon, as reported on several outlets yesterday.
Yeah. As of right now, as we're taping this, I haven't heard anything about sanctions or a notice of allegations or anything like that officially coming out with the University of Michigan. Could be any time. My question to the commissioner was, here he is in his first year, and he's put in a very difficult position where he's got to bring discipline against one of the Big Ten's, frontline institutions. Michigan is as Big Ten as Big Ten gets. And, he was put in a position where he had to look at the evidence that was presented and make a determination. And he decided that the right penalty was to keep Michigan eligible for the Big Ten championship, but to suspend the coach, Jim Harbaugh, for the last 3 games of the regular season. He said that he really relied on the Big Ten staff there at the office in Chicago, as well as other people that, have been confidants to him. He reflected on his time at Major League Baseball. They've had different scandals through the years, the Astros trying to steal signs and different things like that. And, discipline had to be meted out. And he said he stood by their decision. And I take that as a sign that there really is something there to this, and that the NCAA is going to drop the hammer at some point on Michigan, whether that's vacating wins from the previous seasons or making them ineligible in future seasons or whatever it might be. But to me, something wrong did occur, and the commissioner took action at that moment to try and come to some resolution on it. And you can't make everybody happy. That's when you're in that job. So Very difficult position he was put in, but I thought he handled it pretty well.
Very good. All right. Well, Steve, I'm going to get you out of here because I know you got to get going. But last question: with the current setup of our political climate, if Steve Helwagen was then put as president of the United States, what Ohio State player or coach would be your vice president?
Oh man, well, Jim Tressel, he's the master politician, as we saw the senator years ago. I don't know. Tony Gonzalez was in the House of Representatives for a very brief time, 2 years, maybe 4 years. He ran afoul of all the Trumpers and got out of there unscathed. Good for Tony. I saw him in the elevator at Ohio Stadium, and I said, "Well, thanks for trying." And he goes, "Yeah, it was. It wasn't easy." So it is what it is, and yeah, I'm not. I have some political beliefs. I just want our country to go back to being normal. It just everything is just the end of the world if we allow this to happen or that to happen. There are things going on I don't like, heavy inflation, the cost of gas, and everything else. And if they just made things a little bit easier for the working person out there, that's what I'd be for. So whoever help me do that.
Well, let's get the Steve Helwagen, Jim Tressel ticket. Let's get things back to normal, and let's get back to beating Michigan. I think those are all things we can agree on here. So,
No doubt.
all right, Steve. Well, thank you so much for taking your time. We appreciate you. And make sure to just 24/7 sports and Bucknuts, correct?
That's it. 24/7 sports and Bucknuts will be all over the start of preseason camp.
All right, give Steve a follow on X. He puts a lot of good stuff out there. Steve, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
All right, Justin, take care.
You too. All right. So again, want to thank Steve for joining us today. Everybody out there, have a great day. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, Youngstown Studio and the 330 Sports Show. Everybody enjoy your day, and we will be back with plenty of coverage in the near future.